what we're trying to do is have a recognition by Canadians, by society, to who we are. Once that recognition is gained, then we're looking upon, of course, respect for what our contributions have been, but respect for one another. And the last R is, of course, our responsibilities. Our responsibilities to each other as a people, but also our responsibilities to the environment and to Mother Earth. I think Canadians are ready to embrace what has been put out from the Truth and Reconciliation.
I think reconciliation is sort of an intergenerational thing and not so much something that we can attain right now, but it's like an objective that we slowly build towards.
The first and most important thing, I think, is to respect the individual, to respect the student in its self-identification.
I think it starts with opportunities like speaking at seminars involving the trustees, or speaking to other administrative staff about the the history and the culture, the customs, the languages, and the traditions of the First Nation people across Ontario. I think that starts the dialogue.
One of the key ways is to teach the real history of Canada to all Canadians, not just Indigenous people, but all kids, K to 12, have to learn the real history. If you don't do that, you're perpetuating a lie.
It's only when that history is recognized and is acknowledged that we can walk together in that healing process.
And it really is about understanding what it is you need to do differently, what it is you need to do more of in order to make sure that you can provide equity of outcome for Indigenous kids.
Things like going on sweat lodges is great. You can go to a lot of southern communities also have Indigenous friendship centers, and that's also important for making connections, because one of the number one things for Indigenous youth identified as kind of deterrents to their mental health was feeling like they don't belong anywhere. And so having those sorts of groups is really important, I think.
It's important that we do things more regularly other than just maybe specific days of the year, whether it's a PD day or
National Aboriginal Day. There's things like Orange Shirt Day, there's Red Dress Day, where you're honoring missing and murdered Aboriginal women.
It's important to learn more about each other's culture and celebrate one another's culture every single day.
There is research that says kids, Indigenous students connecting with the land is vitally important for them to start the process of decolonization. Obviously, our Indigenous people are land-based people, and learning like this is invaluable for our students to reconnect with the land.
It's just getting back to their roots, really. Like coming out here, they're submersed in nature, they're learning some of the plants that have cultural relevance or medicine use.
If you, especially for elementary schools, instilling that in a young age, that this is Indigenous land and it is important and it's sacred and you have to kind of respect the place that you're learning on, that's really important. That goes a long way.
I think that every single student in Ontario should be learning about first of all, the area that the school board and the schools are operating in were historically lands that were used by various tribes or nations, whether it was the Ojibwe, the Cree people in the north, the Iroquois Confederacy folks down south, the Chippewas in southwestern Ontario, even some of the Innu that occupy northern parts of Canada.
I see it as important for all students, not just Indigenous students, and I see it as a bridge for reconciliation, because it's really about, our treaties are really about sharing space and place, and this is a perfect way to do it in an educational setting.
And it's just been a place where over time kids get very comfortable, they explore nature, they learn about plants and animals.
The language too, like you could hear them saying, butterfly in Ojibwe, and what's that? It's just amazing what they know, and they're 4 and 5 years old.
They want to see the opportunities that are available for them and how they fit in, and how they can also do the cross-cultural. So how can they still be involved in the culture and the language and still, get an education?
So from the TRC recommendations, there was a lot of ideas around languages and Indigenous First Nation languages, particular, of how to promote these. And I think that is stemming from the the residential school era in the Indian Act idea of make them learn French or English, and that tool was used in such a negative way to harm the populations that now, to reconcile that, you must make the same tool of education be a promoter of those languages, and not just preserving the language, but advancing the languages.
Now I'm finding that we have a group of people, our young people, who recognize that they're losing their language and they want to do something about it. And that comes completely from student voice. Those kids want to learn their language.
Indigenous languages is something that's really important, and making sure that that is treated just as valid and just as important as French.
Respect that that child might be coming to school speaking Michif, which is in Ontario very close to French, but it's not French. So appropriate recognition of that language, and then moving on maybe to teach French, but not stopping them from speaking their language, and not telling them that their language is not spoken well.
My sister, she said, why don't we try and develop a language app, she said, because she's so good with technology. And I said, well, you could do the technology part and I can do the legwork.
The two generations have come together, the elders who have the language and the young people who want the language, to create an app that's lasting and is going to stay there and can be updated and can be used by non-Ojibwe speakers to understand the language as well. So when you think of what the kids are doing, that's incredible leadership.
Bring all our teachings together. Bring the technology. Our students love technology. They live it every day. Why not bring in the technology to teach our culture, our language?
For the past 7 years, my wife and I, and my children, to be honest, we initiated what we call a reconciliation initiative, community-based reconciliation initiative. And it's been termed as, we've now named it as Mamawi Together. And the word Mamawi is an indigenous word. It's an Algonquin word for together. And we've started with just me going and doing a drum song for my son in kindergarten, because I wanted him to see himself.
The drum usually, in our tradition, opens an event, and we thought it would be so nice to see our school drum that just started this year. They practice once a week. They have come a long way, and to see them at the center of this event and singing the song to open was just, your heart beats, and the drum represents Mother Earth, the mother who gives us life. You can see the pride in those boys' faces when they drum. They wouldn't even sit by the drum before, whereas now they go and sit there proudly and sing. And the songs they sang were just, fit right, tied right in to what we're doing here.
We just think that all of those things are a necessary part of that support structure, that engagement structure that's going to help kids succeed, and particularly help Indigenous kids succeed.
Les garçons que j'ai été chercher, c'était des garçons identifiés métis. Je disais, est-ce que vous voulez participer à un projet Exprime-toi? Ils ont dit oui, juste parce que je les ai guidés plus ou moins à laisser une trace. Donc, ils ont accepté de participer à fabriquer le banc. Et puis, le banc était l'idée de voir les 7 règles de grand-père, d'une façon où est-ce que quand tu es assis dans le jardin avec les 4 plants sacrés, tu pouvais avoir un moment où est-ce que tu n'étais pas influencé avec la technologie du téléphone ou de l'ordinateur. Tu peux t'asseoir ici, puis avoir le temps de penser, puis faire une réflexion de l'esprit spirituel et puis des choses que les gens s'inquiétaient ou qui ont beaucoup d'inquiétude, mais qui ont un moment de silence pour pouvoir penser. L'idée du jardin, c'était quelque chose de physique. C'était quelque chose que si tu le vois, tu dois savoir pourquoi qu'il est là, puis qu'est-ce que ça représente. Nous sommes en phase 2 cette année. Phase 2 veut dire qu'il est pas mal établi, il est fort. Là, maintenant, c'est de le présenter d'une façon où est-ce que les enfants peuvent présenter les choses, comme reconnaître pourquoi le cercle est planté là. Que veut dire le cercle? Quelle est la route de médecine? Qu'est-ce que ça signifie pour les gens autochtones qui devient important? Mais pas seulement pour cette année, mais pour les autres années à venir. Parce que le jardin ne se déplace pas. Il ne se brise pas, mais il faut quand même en prendre soin pour qu'il revienne chaque année. C'est ça qui devient.
I see, especially Department of Education, they seem to be taking it seriously and trying to work towards that reconciliation. How do we involve Indigenous people? How do we put them into the curriculum?
Even though I am a Anishinaabe person and I could speak to some things, I can't speak to everything. I'm not a traditional practitioner. And so I want to honor those voices of traditional peoples. I want to bring in people who are Métis, people who are Inuit, so that way the students are seeing who is it that's in this entire country, who's in our province, who's in our cities that we maybe don't even know are there, and let them do the speaking of their voices for themselves.
We work with Justice, now Senator St. Clair. Commissioner Wilson came in from the TRC, came in and spoke 1 year as well. The retired Deputy Minister of INAC, Indigenous Northern Affairs, came and spoke. So it's really kind of blossomed, and that's when we started working formally with the one school board, and then the Catholic school board came on board. And so it's next year we're going to dream big, even bigger.
When I'm thinking about what's working really well, it's always when we're working in partnership with community members. And that's, to me, the most important thing that we're ever going to do. I don't think it's up to us to make decisions on our own.
It really is a question of servant leadership, and I think that my own personal work with Indigenous leaders in the region, I've learned over time, I think, to become a very good servant leader, and a lot of it is from some very good modeling that's happened from other Indigenous leaders.
Something recently that's happened that I think would be a really good step for addressing issues Indigenous communities for the Indigenous community is something that the Thames Valley District School Board recently just did, where they created a student trustee position designated specifically for an Indigenous student. So they now have 3 trustees, and one of them every year has to be an Indigenous student, which I think is great in ensuring that that population of people has their voice heard.
We know in our business of education that we've had a long-standing achievement gap between Indigenous kids and non-Indigenous kids, and that gap in Northern Ontario, including in this school board, it's pronounced.
And what we're asking teachers to do often now is to be co-learners with their students, and it's a shift. And I see that shift happening within our system. I have lots of educators, I call them peeps, that come to everything that I do, that are getting a lot of education, are changing things up in their schools.
In Thunder Bay, I quickly learned after going to OSTA, the Ontario Student Trustee Association, how much of a big deal it is to be a student trustee. And it was really transformative too, because through the conferences with OSTA, I was able to make connections. I was able to learn about how to better fulfill my role as a student trustee. And by the end of it, I realized that it was so much more important to be making recommendations and to saying things, and that you represent however many tens of thousands of students in that school board. When you're representing your school board and you're representing those thousands and thousands of students, I think it's really important to pay attention to those Indigenous students too, because they have oftentimes very specific needs and needs that need to be addressed. And I find that Indigenous youth a lot of the time feel like it's not that they don't have a voice, but that they feel like they don't have a platform to share their voice. And so as a trustee, you have the ability to share that for them as a representation of the students.
We have grad coaches now in 4 high schools. This school here is the school that has the longest running grad coach, and the results are amazing. She started 3 years ago with a group of 48 students in grade 9, and all of those kids, I believe 4 of them aren't here anymore, so there's 44 students and I believe 44, and all of those kids are on track. They're in grade 11 right now. They're all on track. They all have all their credits, and they're all going to graduate.
Seeing themselves reflective in our school community is really important. In our greater community, being given opportunities through partnerships, and then moving forward. Those moments happen all the time, and that's the most rewarding part of this work.
I think that with the truth and reconciliation, with us now being able to do these things in our schools, I think that's a good step.
We're all gifts to share. You know, to share what is given to every nation. Not to be on top or in the bottom, but to share as equal people.
We have so much to learn from Aboriginal and Indigenous people. We have so much to learn from them. So those partnerships are predicated on, you know, what can you learn from us and what can we learn from you?
I think of our First Nations, Métis, Inuit Education Advisory Committee, and so we have community members sitting there, and we ask them when we have the board action plan, what is it that you think we're doing well? What is it you think we're not doing well? And we want them to be honest and not to couch things in order to make us feel better, because we're not affecting change for kids by patting ourselves on the back when there's so much work to be done still.
Not only to come to the school and to do all the things that are going to make their kids successful, but really that navigator role in helping families access resources, building really detailed pathway plans for kids, helping to actualize those plans instead of just building the plan and giving it.
Many times as trustees, as teachers, we're always looking for the quick fix, and we don't have the time to sit and listen. You need to spend that time and figure out what's going on and how to get them to the point where you're making a difference.
So we said, okay, let's do something for the parents. And we started a little speaker series, and that's what's continued on. And people were very excited about what we were doing. They said, how can I help?
The TRC stuff, I'm very hopeful. I've seen a lot of movement, especially in Ontario, in their commitment to implementing those calls to action. The Journey Together response by Ontario, I think, is a great start.
I think it's just so crucial for trustees to really immerse themselves in the history of the region, in the Indigenous history of the region.
Reconciliation has to be some action. It can't just be this intention of, oh, I think it'll be great, and wait for someone else to do it. You actually have to take that action.
Whether I'm a private citizen, whether I'm a principal, whether I'm a trustee, whatever my role is, I find a way in my role to make a difference, to help move those yardsticks forward, those change yardsticks forward, to help Indigenous people. And I think collectively, when you can get to a place where there's a lot of people doing that, you know, you will see change. And maybe it'll be faster than a couple of more, you know, generations. I hope it is. I hope it is. I think we've made progress here, but there's still lots of work to do and a long way to go.
A big part of reconciliation that all of our trustees could benefit from is taking the time to understand what it means to be in relationship with one another.
Honesty, truth, respect, and love are the key areas that they teach and you must follow.
Come with an open mind that the past 150 years has not been something to be celebrated for all, in particular Indigenous peoples, but be open to new ideas.
We can't live in the past, it's already gone, but we have to live for now and look at the future. And what do we want for our society?
I'm hopeful that it can change, because it has opened up people's eyes and ears and hopefully their hearts to say, yep, this is the right thing to do. Let's do it together.
We were all given life to walk, and for us to walk together in that path.
Miigwech.
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 Miigwech.